Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim for the Real Sports Talk. We have Kevin McAlpin. Last year we brought him on at Citizens Bank Park and numerous other times via the phone. He was with the Phillies last year. This offseason took a job working for the Braves radio network, and he's going to be helping us out with the Braves season preview today. Kevin, it's been a busy offseason, obviously. What's been up, man?
You know, it's been a busy offseason around the NL East, but I'll tell you, here in Braves camp, it's been pretty much business as usual, with the one exception of yesterday getting the press release and the announcement that after 23 seasons in the big in baseball, Chipper Jones is going to be hanging it up at the end of the year. But yeah, when you look at the Braves roster this year, pretty much an identified as a team coming back from last year, with the exception of the shortstop position, which is going to be a little battle here in the next couple of weeks to see who wins that spot. But yeah, pretty much the Braves returning, pretty identical roster to last year with a few minor, subtractions with Derek Lowe being traded in the offseason, and again, with Alex Gonzalez being gone, that shortstop position sort of up in the air.
Yeah, and I really think that right now the Braves have gone unnoticed this offseason. Sure, they did not make too many huge moves, but the bottom line is the Braves should have won the wild card last year, and they have some really bright young pitchers coming up, that's for sure. They have a bullpen that looks like it's going to be lights out for the next 15 seasons, really. And they had a few guys. Freddie Freeman started slow last year. Dan Uggla had a down season by his standards, and Jason Hayward had a down year. And Chipper Jones, maybe he'll stay healthy this year. So I think people are, and they're going to have Michael Bourne for a full season. So I think people are certainly overlooking the Braves. If we start at the catcher's position, there's not really a ton to say here. Brian McCann consistently has been one of the best catchers in the MLB over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Max has really been one of those consistent guys. And pretty much, when Chipper's gone, Max might become the face of this organization. He's going to be up for a contract in another year and a half here. So, what happens with that, future will tell. But, yeah, Brian McCann, he's one of those guys. He's just a professional. He's an all-star. He's been around a long time. And he's definitely one of those veteran leaders in his clubhouse. One of those guys that was here early and was ready to go, and then, pitchers and catchers started working out, and he was certainly leading the charge for a lot of the position players to get here and get out there and start working again early on in spring.
Yeah, and then you have David Ross at the backup, who actually brings a pretty good bat off the bench as well.
Yeah, Rossy's, kind of guy that, you don't want to put too much into a backup catcher, but, certainly a guy, again, another proven veteran, another, guy that is a good clubhouse guy, and, I asked him one of the first days of camp, I said, what are your thoughts on bringing this entire team back? And he goes, I'm glad they didn't make any moves. I like the team we had last year. I like the team we had this year. So David Ross, again, you don't want to put too much into a backup catcher, but if you have to have a guy who's one heck of a leader down there, and another good guy in the locker room.
At first base, you have Freddie Freeman, finished second in NL Rookie of the Year voting last year to his teammate Craig Kimbrell. And Freddie Freeman showed a lot down the stretch last year. He's one of the few Braves that did that last year. Freddie Freeman looks like he's going to be a bright first baseman for quite a long time. He's only 22 years old, I believe. And to come out in a season where he started slow, hit 282 with 21 home runs, I would expect something closer to like 290 this year with about 25 or 26 home runs, which is only going to help make this Braves lineup better.
Yeah, a little scare with Freddie earlier in camp. He had a knee issue where he missed a couple of games early on when the game started a couple of weeks ago. He's actually going to wear a knee brace for the rest of the year, and probably for the rest of his career. He had a knee injury that he had 2 years ago, and it's the same knee this year. But he's feeling good. He hit a home run yesterday. Looks like his bat's coming around. But I think the one thing you want to watch out for with Freddie Freeman is will he fall into a stop or a slump? I don't think he will. Again, I agree with you. I think 290 is more realistic, and I think the power numbers will certainly come around and increase this year.
And then backing him up over at first base and also doing a lot of the backup, or backing up a lot of guys. He'll get some looks in the outfield as well. My favorite player that isn't a Philly of all time, Eric Hinske, who brings a pretty good bat off the bench and obviously struck out in the 2008 World Series.
Yeah, and excuse me, another good guy. I feel like I'll probably be a broken record by saying it, but this organization, this locker room, it's a very tight-knit organization. And again, Hinsky, a guy who played in 3 World Series in a row, he's another guy that brings that playoff experience, that veteran leadership. And again, he's a guy who's versatile. He can play in the first. He's a good bat coming off the bench. He's a guy that you can play in the outfield. So again, having these guys that can play multiple positions will certainly help.
With a lot of the questions at shortstop, Dan Ugla is pretty much going to be getting all the looks at second base, which hasn't been a problem. He's pretty much played every game of the season since 2006. Last year had a down year. I mean, he's never been a guy that has a great average, but he's still got 36 home runs. The RBIs were down to 82. I would think that he's going to get probably closer to about 95 RBIs in an improving lineup, and hopefully can bring the average back over 250. And one thing I did notice last year is his fielding, which was once unbearable to watch, has at least become somewhat average.
Yeah, Dan, again, with the second base position in the National League, there's so many, even in normal baseball, there's so many big names at that position. But, Dan's a guy who's struggled from time to time with the errors, and, I think, the way things started last season, he dug himself such a deep hole offensively, that it was just such a hard hole to climb out of. And Dan's been raking the ball in spring training. He was really good. He feels good. Another one of the guys that this offseason took it personal to go and do extra work and work hard. He was here, again, he was another guy who was here early in camp. So, these guys, showing that they've got a lot to prove. They want to show that, what happened last year, especially in the month of September, that this team is capable of much better than that.
At shortstop, you mentioned before the big position battle. You have Andrelton Simmons, and you also have Tyler Pastornicki. Who do you see ultimately winning that job at shortstop, or is it more of a platoon type deal? And they do have, I believe, Jack Wilson on the roster as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a toss-up. I would say right now, Tyler Pastornicki is going to be the guy. He came in the spring, sort of penciled in as the everyday shortstop. Struggled at it, slight share of struggle. We got a kid that's 22 years old, as Andrelton Simmons. Both of them have shown pretty good range at shortstop. Simmons probably a little bit better range defensively than Tyler Pastornicki. But Pastornicki yesterday, 4 for 5, a couple of days ago, had a big hit with one in the ballgame in extra innings against the Nationals. So I would probably lean a little bit more towards Tyler Pastornicki. Andrelton Simmons might start the season in AAA, but who knows? I mean, come All-Star break, it could be flip-flopped, and those roles could be reversed. And Jack Wilson, as you mentioned, a guy who's battling some injuries this spring, hasn't been on the field yet, but hopes he can get out there in the next couple of days and get some cuts in here before the regular season gets going.
Over at third base, then you have Chipper Jones, a guy who's been there since 1993, really the last Brave left from those 90s teams that won, I believe, like 15 straight divisions up to like 2004 or something. Chipper Jones, there's never really been a problem with production when he's been in the lineup, but over the past few seasons, just the injuries have absolutely killed him, and they've seemed to kill the Braves at the worst time possible. You remember a few years ago, I think he tore his ACL in like late August and really ended the Braves' chances. Can he get his average back up, and is there any way he could play above 145 or 150 games this year?
Yeah, I think about 110 to 120 for Chipper is probably realistic this year. He's got an option in his contract, but if he hits 123 games, it would kick in, but obviously it's not going to matter because he's announced the official DH for him. But, I think, Chipper at this point, just trying to stay healthy and trying to stay on the field is the most important thing. And then, once that goal is accomplished, so, he's a guy that he's going to be 40 years old in a couple of weeks. But, again, another guy will bring that veteran leadership to the clubhouse. And this team is really going to rally around him in this final season and try to pick up, and then send him out on top. And I think, he's excited. And I think at this point, after he's made the announcement that this will be it for him, I think it's a burden off his shoulders. I think he's relieved now that he doesn't have to keep answering the questions all year. Is this going to be it? Will you do that next year? He can now focus on the season, work on what he needs to work on to get ready, and again, focus on what he needs to get prepared for the season and not be answering the same questions about will you retire, will you be back next year.
Do you think it's a lock that he does retire, or if the Braves were able to go to the NLCS and just fall short of going to the World Series and he's able to play 140 games or so, do you think he would consider coming back?
Well, he said it flat out yesterday. He said nothing that can happen this year will change my mind. I've made my mind up. I'm looking forward to spending time with my family. I'm looking forward to spending time with the kids, going on summer vacations. I'm looking forward to downtime and really catching up on really what he's missed over the last 20 years with his family. He basically has come right out that this is going to be it. No matter what happens, I will not be back next year. This is going to be the final season, and pretty much no one's going to change my mind.
Out in the outfield, you have Martin Prado, a guy who 2 years ago had a really nice season. Actually, 2009 and 2010, he hit over 300 in both of those seasons. Then last year, as he moved out to the outfield, once they acquired Dan Uggla, hit only 260 with 13 home runs and 57 RBIs. The power numbers weren't all that far off from what he had been doing, but you would like to see a higher average out of him. And then you also have Matt Diaz, who they got back from the Pirates midseason. And one of the things I like about Diaz is he brings a guy who could be a starter on most teams. And we saw the last 2 seasons what having a deep bench does for teams in the playoffs, especially in the NL. Having guys like a Cody Rossi you acquire midseason or having a David Freese. I like the depth that the Braves have in the outfield.
Yeah, and Martin's another guy who's been here. He's been, working very hard. He actually took some time in the offseason and really tried to work on some things offensively. And he's a guy that Chipper told me flat out. These guys, Martin especially, he knew what he had to do. Nobody had to point fingers about what happened last year. It wasn't one guy that let this team down. It was a collective effort. And he said Martin did his work. He come into camp looking good, and Chipper's very confident that Martin is going to be another productive player. And the good thing with Martin is he's a guy that you can throw him in at third if Chipper needs a day off. You can throw him over at second if Dan Uggla needs a day off. So again, another guy, versatile, that can be, he can play multiple positions there.
In center field, Michael Bourne, a guy who they acquired mid-year last year, was really one of the guys that fell under the radar in Houston. He's never going to be a guy that gives you great power. Hopefully this year for the Braves, he can have his first 300-plus season, but he is a great leadoff hitter, and what he does bring is the stealing bases, because last year he stole 61, 2 years ago he stole 61, and in an off year in 2010 he stole 52. So he's going to give you 50-plus stolen bases, and in this lineup there's actually some good pieces that can hit him in now.
Yeah, if he can play, with Martin right behind him, and then you look at Chipper, McCann, Freeman, Uggla, Hayward all behind him in the lineup. You get him on to lead off the game, there's a pretty good chance you're going to score a run early, or a couple runs early. And again, the guy who changes the dynamics of a lineup, he gets on base, he gets pretty much penciling him into the stolen base before he even gets there. So another guy that's going to change the lineup, and then having him in the lineup for a full season will certainly help the Braves, and it'll certainly change the dynamic of the lineup.
In right field, you have Jason Hayward, who fell into a huge sophomore slump last year. After a nice rookie year, he had 227 last year with only 14 home runs. His career could go 1 or 2 paths. Now he could have a bounce-back season, hit like 22, 23 home runs, or he could go down the Jeff Francoeur road, and that's probably not something he wants to do in Atlanta if he wants to be liked. So what do you see out of Jason Hayward this season?
Well, he came into camp about 20 to 25 pounds lighter than last year, and he sort of changed his swing just slightly. And they have an area outside the right field fence here at Champion Stadium. They call it the Hayward Tent, which is where they park the front office cars and some of the coaches' cars underneath tents, specifically because of him during batting practice. He just rakes balls out of that area. So he's been swinging that well. Freddie Gonzalez happy with his approach at the plate. He's been aggressive at the plate. He's gone up there, looking to act. Gotten some good swings, and the numbers aren't quite there, quite where he wants them to be yet. But Freddie's certainly encouraged by, some aggressiveness at the plate, and I think Jason's going to be fine. And he's in a good frame of mind. And again, he's just got to come in and do his job. And if everyone comes in and does their job and doesn't put too much pressure on themselves, I think this lineup's going to produce a lot more runs than people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the final 2 pieces that are going to add some depth in that outfield are Jose Constanza and Jordan Perez. So as we look over to the starting rotation now, anchored by Tim Hudson, one of those guys that's kind of been one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last 10 or so years and really has flown under the radar ever since being in Oakland. 16-10 last year, 3.22 ERA. He's getting up there in age, but really doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. He threw a complete game last year and well over 200 innings.
Well, it's going to be tough because he's going to miss the first month of the season. He's rehabbing. He's been throwing some bullpen sessions, so he's not going to be expected to get into that rotation until May the 1st. Is pretty much the target date for Tim Hudson to return. When we look at the rotation, you've got guys like Tommy Hanson. You've got guys like Aaron Judge, who struggled this spring. Again, another guy coming off an injury. You pretty much look at the entire, starting rotation here, and someone's had injury problems at some point, or another throughout the last, year or so. When you look at guys like Mike Miner, who's pitching today, he has been unbelievable in spring. He hasn't allowed a run in 14 innings. Another guy with young arms, gaining more and more confidence as it goes along. And then you've got guys like Raymond Delgado and Julio Teheran competing for that fifth spot once Hardy comes back. I think Raymond Delgado is going to get a slight nod as a favorite at this point. I would think that he would beat out Teheran. Teheran struggled, hitting a ton of home run balls this spring. But, again, once Tim Hudson comes back, you're looking at guys like Hardy, you're looking at, Hanson, Jurgens, Mike Miner, and Raymond Delgado. And I don't think that's a bad starting five. Again, with some young arms that have gotten some big experience last year down the stretch in September, certainly will help their confidence going forward.
Jair Jurgens at that number 2 spot. He'll probably end up being the opening day starter. There's been a lot of questions about him. I've heard that he struggled this spring. There's been a lot of trade rumors around him, even going back to last season. 13-6 with a 2.96 ERA, so he still had a very nice year. Did not quite make as many starts as they would have liked with 23, and that's kind of been one of the problems with him over the last 2 seasons, is just staying healthy. Do you believe he's going to finish the season as a Brave?
I do. Yeah, I really do. I mean, again, I think he's a guy that they've got a lot of trust in. They've got a lot of faith in him. They didn't move him this offseason, and at this point, with the way he's struggled now, you obviously can't do anything with him because of, again, as he struggled this spring, trusting that knee and his legs, being able to push off and focus on his mechanics now is what he needs to work on. But, I think at the end of the season, to answer your question, I do believe he will be in LA.
At the number 3 spot, Tommy Hanson, a guy who came up with such expectations. The first season he was up 11-4 with a 2.89 ERA, and every season since, his ERA, it hasn't been bad, but it's gone up. This is a guy, when he first came up, I looked at some of the pitches he was able to throw, and that slider he has is absolutely nasty. Is he going to take that next step finally? Because I've been waiting for it for a couple years and hasn't necessarily come.
I think he will. I think at this point, he's had a little setback this spring as well. I mean, he had a little one-call accident the first day of pitchers and catchers. So he's a little bit behind where everybody else is at this point. But Tommy looked good. I mean, he's going to make his third official start. His first one got rained out a couple of Sundays ago here at the Champion Stadium. But Tommy's definitely a guy that, again, I think the Braves think very highly of, and I think we've got a lot of confidence in him. I think he's poised for a big season.
Brandon Beachy at the number 4 spot had a pretty nice season. I mean, it's not like ace material, but you'll take 7-3 with a 3.68 ERA out of him, and he's still pretty young, so you would think that he would improve. Do you expect pretty much similar stuff from Beachy this season?
Yeah, I think it's similar numbers. I think it can be expected. And again, I don't know. It's so early. It's so hard to kind of pinpoint who's going to do exactly what. At this point in the season, but I think when you look at this entire pitching rotation, top to bottom, I think the numbers can certainly go up. But I think again, they're confident in all these arms they have. Again, a depth of arms and a bunch of young arms that have proven that they can step up in big situations and get the job done.
Mike Miner at the number 4 spot, Mike Miner at the number 5 spot. You mentioned how good he has looked this spring. Had a disappointing season last year. What do you think are some realistic numbers that we should look for from him this year?
Well, Mike's looked great this spring. I mean, he's making his 5th start today. Hasn't allowed a run. As far as what we can expect from him, it's sort of a great unknown. But Mike's definitely a guy who's gaining more and more confidence with each start down here. He's feeling good. He's feeling like he came into camp this year knowing what his role was, and last year he was sort of up in the air on where he was going to end up. But I think the confidence of knowing what the Braves have in store for him, what their plan is this year, I think he has certainly gave him a little bit of boost of confidence, and he's sort of been able to come in here and focus on what he needs to do on the mound and not worry about where he's going to end up.
The 2 guys at the back of this rotation that will not begin, or Delgado probably will begin the season in the rotation, but once Hudson comes back, he probably will either be in the bullpen or in AAA. You have him and Julio Teheran, who we've heard a ton about how good that guy is supposed to be. But did not necessarily blow anyone away as he came up, or as he's come up in spring training this season, and he struggled in some brief appearances last year in the MLB. I don't think that that's too much to worry about. The thing about these guys is they're young, and they also bring potential trade bait if the Braves could not work out that shortstop position. But if they can, this only shows how much depth the Braves are going to have going forward in that pitching rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can never have too many arms, especially in the in AAA, wait to come up. And again, guys that got that experience last season was huge. So you can never have too many arms. And again, as you mentioned, if something doesn't work out, they certainly have some big trade pieces if they need to go that route.
And the big three guys in the bullpen, we'll start with Eric O'Flaherty. Last year was absolutely nasty. 2-4 with an 0.98 ERA in 78 games. Probably the best overall lefty in the MLB last year.
Yeah, Johnny Beners as well. I mean, Johnny Beners was no slouch either in there. So I think they certainly complement each other. Johnny Beners and Eric O'Flaherty. Certainly two strong left arms coming out of that bullpen, setting up Craig Kimbrell. So I mean, we've seen it last year. If this team has a lead in the 6th, 7th inning, they're going to be awfully tough to beat.
Johnny Beners will be the setup man. He came up last year, began the season as a closer, had some struggles, but after being made the setup man, really settled in, went 6-2 with a 1.84 ERA in 88 innings. With him and Craig Kimbrell at the back of that bullpen, and Craig Kimbrell saved 46 games last year. He did blow a decent amount of saves, but that's going to happen when you get over 50 attempts. He had a 2.10 ERA. The thing about these guys is very rarely do we see teams actually bring up relievers at this young of an age that are this good. And the Braves, I think, have the best bullpen in the MLB. And with O'Flaherty, who I believe is under 30, and Veners and Kimbrell, who are under 25, the Braves bullpen is going to be one of the best in MLB for a long time going forward.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing to keep your eye on with that, though, is how they manage the offense. I think Freddie Gonzalez and Roger McDowell certainly have to keep their eye on not overusing the bullpen, which is something that you saw some fatigue in September last year, and you saw the numbers dip a little bit. So I think Freddie and Roger certainly have to monitor that workload to make sure that these young arms don't get taxed and are full and ready to go come September, because that's when they need them the most.
All this being said, Kevin, what do you expect the Braves, where do you expect them to go? Do you see them going to the playoffs, whether it's division, wild card, and where do they go beyond there?
You know what? I wish I could tell you, look into the crystal ball and tell you where I see them. I can just tell you this. I think they're going to shock some people this year. I think they're going to win a lot more games than people give them credit for. I really believe that they, sort of flying under the radar here this offseason has been beneficial to them, and they've been able to focus on their work. And, look, I know that they're all motivated by playing hard for Chipper's final season. So, if I can look into a crystal ball and tell you, I wish I could, but I just tell you that I do think they're going to shock some people. This is a good team, and if they can stay healthy and if they can swing the bats like they're all capable, they could be a very dangerous team, and they can go deep into October.
All right, Kevin McAlpin of the Braves Radio Network. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Anytime.